Former principal of La Martiniers for girls and present director of James Academy is Hilda Peacock ma'am. Hilda Peacock ma'am is here. Okay, I'll just name her after she arrives here. We have Dr. Nilima Sinha, former principal of Nistani College for Women, has always been with Felix and Nandritam. Any crisis on health needed, she has always guided us. Miss Dr. Nilima Sinha, would you please come up on the stage? Okay, fine. Next, we have a wonderful person with us. Parthu Pratim Roy, Academic Coordinator and Head of the Department of Physics, South Point School. Founder Head of Center for Physics Education Research, Kolkata. Highly experienced in the development of learning and methodology. He's not only a mentor for the science teachers of our school, he also is my mentor. Sir, please. Under the guidance and constant monitoring of Ranjana Sengupta, some of the books had to be made, keeping in mind the harm created by COVID and the children who suffered. The books were drafted and compiled by Tanusri Patra with full devotion. Young teacher, yet she's just running from she's jogging up here. Being a young teacher, she's a new mother too. So she's here. We would like to have Tanusri on the stage. Please put your hands together. She's done an excellent job. The education for all is not only for the pre-primary and primary. We have children of standard 9, 10, 11 and 12 who come and stay with us on Saturdays and Sundays, and they are trained under the guidance of wonderful teachers, science teachers. So I would like those science teachers who give unconditionally to them to come up on the stage. Dr. Shubhrata Rao, HOD, Botany, Shidukanu University, a man who is always ready to make the environment greener. He serves humanity. He is the coordinator of our science education of EFA. Science and no mentioning of District Science Center is not right. I should be mentioning Dhrubajyoti Chattopadhyay, District Science Officer, always telling us to be with him for science. Our students always love to be with him. So please. Completed BSc Chemistry Honors, MSc in Environmental Science, and MS in Science Communication from VITS Pilani. I would request Dr. Orgo Mondol, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, Shidukanu Bisha University, Purulia, and Visiting Fellow, Department of Mathematical Science, University of Essex, UK, to please come up on the stage. Young man who helps out the children with maths. So please. We have another maths professor, Assistant Professor, Department of Maths, Shidukanu University, Dr. Gorachand Chakraborty. Please come up on the stage. You know, maths is really frightening to some, but they have made it so a happy learning for many. Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, Government General Degree College, Manbaja 2, Purulia, Mr. Rajesh Dey, please, is not here. Okay. Birish Chandra Laik is here? No. Okay. We have Dr. Srinivas Mishra, former principal JK College 2. He's not well. He has informed us and has rendered his apologies too. I would request Dr. Nilima Sinha to please come up on the stage. She has always been with us during times, hard times, and also times when we were happy, when there was no COVID. She has always guided us, and Felix is in debt to her always. Education for all would not be possible if we did not have Jagannath Goswami, a member of Namritam. He needs to be appreciated because he's rendering wonderful service, coordinating all the programs and forum discussions. Jagannath, please come up. With him, we have Krishnendu Chatterjee, we have Debashish Roy, we have Shushmita Shaha, we have Karuna Tudu, we have Aditi Mondal and Shilpi Mukherjee, and we are proud of their efforts too. Hilda Peacock ma'am, former principal of La Martinia for Girls and present director of James Academy Learning. English from her is a treasure. She has unique ways of teaching phonics and she is a resource person. Ma'am, we are so privileged to have you here. Please. Yes. We would also call Mr. Pankaj Sharkar of Cheki College to please come up. I'm sorry, I saw others come in here, so please come in, sir. Now, when you come into Nandritam, you find lot of trees. You find a wonderful school. You find a wonderful hospital. Everything lively, full of life. But when this area was barren, when it was devoid of electricity and other facilities, the only person who was here is Mr. Manav Kundu. I would request him for his service from the day one till today. I think he needs a loud applause and we appreciate you always. We appreciate you always. Said people who play behind the screen are more effective than on the stage. Except, sir, please, me. Okay. So, Mr. Manav Agnik, please come up on the stage. We say thank you to you. You're always with us. Thank you, sir. I'm just repeating certain things, which we all know. Last 2 years was a nightmare for to the whole world. We learnt a lot, we lost a lot. The world is still staggering. But we had many philanthropic people who stretched out their hands, helping us, which was a boon to humanity. We also have to mention the Yash storm, which created a havoc. So Nandritam reached out to Kajuri in Midnapur and they supplied food items, ration and medicines, clothes and oxygen cylinders to 10 districts in West Bengal. Be it Shabot tribes, be it Bihor, be it the snake charmers, be it the Bahurupis of Bolpur, be them. Ashish Gurniev, the headmaster of Sri Aurobindo be facilitated by Dr. Basu. Please come up. The outreach program was, he was one of them. We have many of them. We have Dr. Shubrata Rahul. If I have to name, I have to name many. But it was not a small affair. You know, they had to wash the things, they had to pack the huge group of people. If I have to say, Sharup, Krishnendu, Rothin, Pinaki, Shukla, Shushmita, staff, Bharati ma'am herself, Ranjana, teachers, students, everybody. On behalf of them, I will ask Mr. Shapal Shah to come and please take the award. Or the thank you, the way of saying thank you to all of them. We thank each one of them. We clap for them, please. They would be awake till 2 at night, packing things and doing everything to make the place a wonderful. Thank you, sir. Dr. Oshim Sena. Is doctor here? Dr. Oshim Sena is here? No. Next we have here Shubharna Moito. Please come your video media during affiliation. Unconditionally, she's all. Thank you. Sir, I'll go just out of the agenda a bit, may I? Sir, may I go out of the agenda a bit? Yes. Please. Thank you, sir. Nanritam is Nanritam because there's a dedication of many. I have to name many of them. I have to name Dr. Shamal, I have to name Dr. Ashish Chatterjee, I have to name Mr. Korunamai Mukhopadhyay, I have to name many, many more people.
It means no to negativity. In a very small word, no to negativity means where of Nanritam, this is the driving force, and the driving seat, Ranjana was sitting there and driving the car. So this is in brief about to start with. And let me talk about in way back in 2003-4, I believe. So that time there was frantically searching of different places when Maharaj has given the word that you should do these things. So they were in search of places in Purulia district, and the then principal of Purulia Ramakrishna Mission, Swami Umanandaji Maharaj, and he has actually helped us a lot that time. And then there were multiple places was being seen, of which only this Borondanga was selected. So I don't know how the Borondanga has come up. Those who are Bengali, you can understand what is the name of Boron. Boron means you can adapt a new thing. সবাইকে নতুন করে বরণ করে নেওয়ার যেটা থাকে। And Danga means it's a land. But if you go back, that time actually Borondanga is, if you translate it in English, it pronounced like a barren Danga. So it is a barren land. And indeed, it was a barren land, where dacoity was happened here, and everything was happened, and this non-rhythm only has made this green thing what we do see today. And on the live what you have seen yesterday evening, you all have noticed the kind of, with this moment so much of humid weather, but still you have seen the live at 11 o'clock. The people have dancing here. So this is the life here. And when there is a life, nobody can stop it. So 2003 moved ahead. Initially, there was a very small way of monthly. There are small camps. So there are medical camp with cardiology, or gastroenterology, eye, and skiing, of different multi-specialty, small camp we used to do there here. And then, and that was not sufficient. So probably the mother, Holy Mother, had a different destiny for us. So I'm always telling us on behalf of Nandritam, please accept me as a part of Nandritam. So on that, then in a small heart, there was medical camps with the help of Dr. Ashish Chakrabarty. I think Ashish is not here today because of his illness, but Ashish was very much needed today for this program. Ashish, with his initiative, he has started this medical camp in 2003 onwards. It was going on, but 2008 actually it took a form where different. And 2008 there was this 21st of February. This is the first day where we did 24 surgeries in this year. In this that was a barren land at that point of time. You can't believe, even in today's life, we have inaugurated this modular ROT. I'll just have a quick glimpse of that. But even today also, we face so much of difficulty of taking the doctors here, the other facilities, the paramedical staff way down from Calcutta to bring it here, and all the machineries from bring it here. The support staff. That time also doing every month of 20, 30, 50 surgeries in a month is a huge, is a mammoth task. But it was going on for years together. Then in 2012, Ashish was very close to us. Us means I'm talking about BVI Foundation, and then me, Dr. Saurabh Sinha, Dr. Love Kochgawe, Dr. Krishnendu. So 4-5 of us, we just thought that this is a very, very novel site where we can we just came once. Ashish has requested you need to come once and just see us, see what we are doing. Just came here, and we have felt that positive vibes. Until then, since 2012, we are rendering this retina service. And then since 2012, 2014, it has been declared at par with Regional Institute of Ophthalmology of Calcutta, so which is called the Medical College. So that was the biggest achievement for us. The then Director of Health Services has given in clear, I think it is still there in our document, that this hospital can be taken as a referral system for 4 districts of Bankura, Purulia, Jharkhand, and Paschim Medinipur. So these are the places from where they don't need to go to Calcutta. They can just get the similar kind of service of what the Regional College of Ophthalmology is given. And till then, from there, we are providing retina services of international quality, glaucoma services, squint and other facilities with so much of difficulty. And with the help of Ashish Da, Shamal Da, Bharati Di, and obviously Ranjana, and with Manav, Pranav, Jagannath, everyone. The moment you tell this is needed, they are ready to jump for that, whatever is the cause. And then since then, it was pre-COVID, we used to do more than 10,000 cataract surgery and more than 500 retina surgery. So just for the information, there was only few hospitals in India who does this volume of the surgery in 1 year. There were few hospitals. It as compared with AIMS, Shankar Nethralaya, LV Prasad Eye Institute, or the Chitrakoot Eye Institute, where there are hardly less than 10 institutes in India who used to do like this kind of. Obviously, Oshinda is there. Oshinda is another person who does like this volume of surgery. So this is the volume we used to do. And COVID has made a lot of changes, but believe me, on a single day, that even on Sundays also, the service has not been stopped. Every day we had our in-house doctors here, and they were always ready to do the surgery. And even we have inaugurated Shubarna. Yeah. So we have inaugurated 3,000 square foot of operation theater, which is of international class of operation theater, modular operation theater. I'll just give you a quick glimpse of that. And it was inaugurated by none other than Amader Kaushik. And this is I can say proudly, this is a modular theater. You can see it looks like a Hollywood film theater. You are just going to watch it. But again, uh, there are few hospitals who has like this kind of facility in West Bengal. I'm talking about in West Bengal. This is the sixth, and this is probably the first or second outside Kolkata of this kind of facility to have this kind of modular facility in ophthalmology setup. So this is a big achievement for Nandritam. With a big round of applause for that. And today we are very proud to have this association today. Thank you, Kaushikda, for giving us this opportunity again to move ahead further. And we have the world-class machine. I think Yagnikji is here, and he has helped us to procure Alcon system of machine, which is also the highest end of machine, which is available in Shankar Nethralaya, in LB Prasad Eye Institute, and I can proudly say the machine they have, we have the same machine. Rajar ঘরে যেদুন আছে, আমার ঘরেও সেদুন আছে. So let's put our hands together and for Nandritam, for Lokesh Eye Foundation to move further. Everyone can do a small thing for them, and they can go to the next level, and where we can see, yes, I am with them. Thank you.
Just add, we have just started our extension services in Darjeeling.
Yes, I was so focused on this place. Even before that, they used to do 26 outreach program, 26 outreach places of this 4 district, where they used to go and give services to the remotest places of of those LW areas were there, and everywhere they used to give it up. COVID has changed a lot of things, but still they were doing in multiple places till now, and they have not restricted them to this western area. And this Purulia, from Purulia they have gone to Darjeeling district, and they have started their service at Darjeeling, and soon another center is going to open up at Darjeeling. Thank you so much.
Very happy evening to all of us present here. I pay my respect to Professor Kaushik Basu. Sir, so privileged to be on the same stage with you. And my respects to all the distinguished guests, members of Nandritam, my dear colleagues, my principal, and my children who are sitting over there. So I was an I'm an accidental member to the Felix family. So when the school was being planned, I was just sitting nearby. I had no plans. I had no idea. But the heart and soul of the school, Ranjana and Bharati Di, they were planning that they would start a school soon in the same hospital campus. So I happened to be sitting in the other corner of the sofa, and when I got drawn into the entire discussion and gradually to the school, I simply have no idea. But I did get drawn in, and suddenly one day I saw that I'm in the campus and I'm in the classrooms. I started teaching. Then, when I was living in just the other part of India, just the other coast of India, in Manipal, I suddenly saw one day Ranjana, who's my friend, and Bharatidi drop into my house to request me whether I would help them mentor their teaching staff. So I just said, you could have told me over the telephone. You did not need to come all the way from Purulia to Manipal just to ask me this. But they were that sincere. And from then on, I have been with my colleagues, my teachers. So I have been on numerous calls with them. I have been on numerous calls with Bharatidi and Ranjana with one sole motive: how can we improve uh, education for our children? Our children. That was always, quote unquote, our children. That was always the subject of all the conversations that we had in all these times. And suddenly now, it's been a little more than 1 month that I am fully and what should I say, have been welcomed in the Felix family with my association with Felix for around 7 years. There are three distinguishing features that I would like to point out, that I have seen in Felix, which I have not seen in the other institutions which I have worked in. I have worked in numerous schools. The first one is creativity and experiential learning lies at the heart of Felix. The chief mentors of Felix, Ranjana and Bharatidi, they never tried to build a traditional school. They never tried to walk on a beaten track. They traveled all across the world to find resource person, to find resources, to find teaching learning tools so that their children learn not from books and notebooks but hands on. I have never really seen things done to such detail as is done in Felix. That is the first distinguishing feature that I have seen in Felix. The next that I have seen is the dedication of everybody, everybody, be it my colleagues, the teachers, be it the mentors, be it my principal, and be it the children. So we had if we have to do something, we do it with all our passion and with all our interest and all our focus. So I think the 1 month that I have been with Felix, I have felt it like in my bones that if they think of doing something, they do it with all passion. This is a very rare thing. Nobody comes, does their work and goes in Felix. They really make up their mind. And I am indeed very privileged. I feel loved, valued, recognized here. And when you feel loved, valued, recognized, you want to give back the same to the people around you. So I wish Felix a long life, a long, prosperous life, and a very well charted out track for all my children who are sitting there. So may they grow up and serve the society just like their mentors are doing. And please bless this school because it has got tremendous potential in it. So, for the last 3 days, we have been organizing a learning festival, which has been the sole initiative of all my colleagues who are sitting there, all the teachers and the children who are sitting there. So I don't think many of you had the opportunity to visit the learning festival. So this is, what should I say? This is a little slice of the experiential learning that goes on behind the walls of Felix. My friend Shubarna here has made a short video on the learning festival. So we'd like to just roll the film and give you a glimpse of how the children of Felix actually learn. Not chalk, talk, book, notebook, but the hands-on way. Thank you so much.
As we all know, we don't want to accept, but we know principals are a little nosy and pokey. So I have to poke my nose in. This learning festival, the mentor is she. It's a brainchild. Please give her a loud applause. Thank you so much.
साउंड ट्रैक नहीं होना चाहिए.
Yes, I'm glad. That was my problem. Glad mom.
Sharada sir, please, with the education for all, please sir.
Good evening. Well, respected Kaushik Basu and all the distinguished guests here, I know that you are all here to listen from Kaushik Basu, so I'm not going to take too long of your time. But see, my advantage, I have the privilege. You have to listen to me because they're all going to wait to listen from him, right? But I today, as a listening here, sitting, I feel that I'm really privileged that I am speaking after two speakers who have done such a wonderful speeches and actually made my job so easy. So when I'm standing here, I don't have to explain what non-rhythm is. I don't have to explain what Phillips School of Education does. I'll just simply introduce you with the program Education for All. But before that, a small correction. I think when I was sitting on that chair, I was introduced as a big sum tell what I did in the past here and there. I would like you to remember only one thing as I would like to introduce myself to you. I'm a simple, humble member of non-rhythm family. I think Dr. Rupa Vishaj gave a line. He said, Dr. Ashish Dakpuri told him, just come once. I think that's the magic. That's the word. Someone told me, just come once. I came once. I'm here now as a part of the family, coming back almost every time. So that's non-rhythm for me. So today's program, we are going to talk about Education for All. Education for All is a program that's a non-rhythm education initiative that is taking non-rhythm's quality outside the non-rhythm's campus. Already, Priyanka has told you many things, the great stuff about the Felix School of Education. You already know about the spirit of non-rhythm. Non-rhythm is three things, in my opinion. It's sincerity, discipline, professionalism. But that alone probably would not have described everything what non-rhythm does and what I have felt what non-rhythm can do and has achieved in a short time everywhere. Non-rhythm has another fourth dimension. I have worked all over the world in three continents. Those three disciplines, as I mentioned, sincerity, discipline, professionalism, you'll find in very good organization. It's not that difficult. It's difficult, but you can find them. But the fourth dimension, the differentiate non-rhythm, from others is called love. I think that's what makes non-rhythm different. And we all feel that, we all know that. Now, coming back to education for all, as I said, this is the outreach program that non-rhythm has started from the Felix School of Education. In simple word, the starting of EFA, which had started sometime, the concept started sometime in November last year, is essentially a confluence of three things that led the starting of this EFA program. One is, of course, the Felix School of Education, the exceptional body of knowledge, the exceptional training, exceptional pedagogy, and everything that Priyanka has very nicely described, and some of you probably have that experience of yourself. So that school can be compared. I can, with my little experience or a little more experience around the globe, I can say that school can be compared from anywhere in any best schools in the world, not just for academics, but the mission they have to build children and to give them the purpose of life. So that's Felix School of Education there. With that, there is a non-rhythms people network. Non-rhythms people network that reaches every corner of the remotest of the remote villages. Dr. Rupak Vishwas was telling you about the eye hospital. The eye hospitals network is spread all the corners of the villages. That's how people come to know. And that network is a people network. So when COVID happened, that network was come to alive because they changed their role and everybody probably put up the sleeves and went to work. And non-rhythm gave the leadership and villages after villages or districts, 4,000 volunteers participated and they made a miracle that time. So that volunteer group, there are many teachers were there. So as that first part of the COVID relief and etc. completed, they started bringing the noise that, well, what will happen to our children? The schools are closed. And of course, in this remote corner, economically divide and the digital divide together would not allow you to have any real digital online classes, etc. So that arch, that understanding from the bottom up, from the heart of the teachers who are really rooted in the community, the need for a program was required, and non-rhythm has always responded to that call, and that's how the Education for All program was created. So what I'll try to give you, that's the program background. I would say a little bit about the vision, the objective of the program status today, and future path forward. Next slide, please. In simple terms, the Education for All is the addressing, first phase is addressing the foundational literacy and numeracy solution for pre-primary and primary students. Deliver a sustainable and equitable system solution for rural underprivileged community without compromising the quality. Now, so although the need was defined and that was the whole opportunity came to life during the COVID school closure, we all recognize in this remote rural villages, the pre-primary, primary, the literacy, numeracy issues are not just it happened during the COVID. Yes, COVID has deepened the issue, but that need was always there. So that was the idea, was utilizing Felix schools, all the body of knowledge, their pedagogy, their dedication, their ability to solve problem. Can we create a sustainable solution which will go beyond the COVID issues? Of course, we'll address the COVID-related school closures, the gaps there are. But this is not just a kind of a natural disaster relief and then go back. Yes, you have to do that, but you have to build a sustainable solution that will be there to make a real difference going forward. And most interestingly, we believe, another thing I underline that without compromising quality. I think that is another very, very, very important, I would say, DNA of non-rhythm. Quality is never compromised. Just because you're far away from the metro cities, just because you are doing it for the underprivileged or whoever, you would not compromise quality. Education, health, that is not something you would try to give your quality the best you can give at the best of your abilities. That's the way it is. So idea was, yes, we will try to take EFA program outside, but we will try our best to take the best quality that we have within the campus, and we will innovate the other axis to reach to the remotest part and try to provide the best quality we can. And to deliver that, the most important feature we found and that differentiates this program is that a sustainable empowered teachers network. So we actually have right now 500 teachers rooted in the community who are really working with their children. Not all of them are not necessarily highly qualified, but their dedication, their interest to solve and provide education to the children is second to none. In fact, yesterday, Madam Hilda Baker was addressing our EFA teachers. I'll tell the EFA teachers who are here for the last 2 days. And she was mentioning why teaching profession is noble. She gave many examples. I'm not going to do all those things. All are actually could bring tears to anybody's eyes. She said, doesn't matter how famous somebody have become. One day they had to go to the pre-primary, primary school steps. Had there been no those teachers who held their hands and tried to write them the first letters, if they were not there, who was kind of wiping their tears to making sure the study, nothing will happen. So in this education for all, as we are doing, we definitely found most of our children, 95% of them, maybe more, are first generation schoolgoers. They're learning literacy and numeracy first time in generation. So this COVID alone has not created that problem for sure. But how to solve that problem, we believe, is empowering the teachers. The teachers who came forward, who had that passion and dedication, and they wanted to solve that problem for the children. We have the obligation, we feel that's an unwritten spirit, how to make those teachers that their passion and dedication can be empowered, the proper training, proper books, whatever we have, how to give them. So the teachers network is the biggest strength of this program, and that's the most differentiating feature, I would say. Next slide. So in a nutshell, this gives the very high level, this program. As I said, the project inception was in 2021, November 2021. I still remember the day when in October, just before Puja time, I came here first time last year, and myself and Ranjana discussed a few things, and then there are some plans and programs, and by November, I understood a big network of teachers have already gathered in Nanritham campus from the rural areas and decided that you have to do something. So the long story short, then through the December, and I have seen things, corporate projects, many places, but the speed things happen, in the way things are addressed and the things are built is unprecedented in my opinion. So what happened? That we needed to prepare books. Yes, Nanritham had books, but they have books by class. That exceptional pedagogy that is Priyanka was explaining, it is the activity-based, contextual, connecting, all this pedagogy. They have it in books and others, but how do you convert that? That can be utilized for this remotest of the remote corners. So curriculum are built utilizing those body of knowledge based on those pedagogies. 2 books are prepared, and the idea of those books would be as such: one in literacy in English, another was in numeracy and math, in the way that either a starter who is just starting their education now, first time, or anybody who probably has gone up to class 3, 4 can utilize these books. And particularly because COVID might require, because different class maybe in a different shape, with the student who is in class 3 probably missed the class 1 and 2, so you need to make up for them. And we also realized as we started the work that even some areas, class 5, 6, there are a lot of gaps. These books could be utilized for that. The books are just a part of it, the books together with the pedagogy, with the training, etc. So we then created those books. Books had to be translated in Bengali, the maths part. Books are prepared, books are printed. All those things happen in a rapid time. 5,000 each books, free of cost, distributed to the remotest corner to all the teachers and many students. So that happened around January. We got a little bit delayed because the second COVID wave. But despite of all those things, Jagannath and his team, they did a miracle, really. I mean, every corner, people know them by name. I visited a few places. So book distribution completed, and essentially we start the program launched externally. And that together is not sufficient, right? Because we could have said, okay, we have done, Nanritam could have said, we have created wonderful, two beautiful books. Everybody's loving the books. Let's give the books. And we are done. We have solved the problem. But if the objective of solving the real problem, not just pretending to solve the problem, then that is not enough. So what happened? We did few things. The program did a few things. First, we started getting the baseline data to the remotest corner using a tool, which is a very established tool, to understand each of this child, what they belong today, what level they are in the mathematics and numeracy and literacy area. So we had that baseline. We have right now 150 schools, whether government school, private school, learning centers have joined this program from 10 districts of West Bengal. There are 500 teachers representing those schools, and they're actually impacting 20,000 primary students. So, and all this happening, I put the timeline for purpose to give a sense of how fast things are happening. You all work in India, you know all the barriers and all the issues, all the complaints, and how we give excuses. Despite of all these things, this happened in the street. That's Nanritam magic. I am a new member of Nanritam family, but I can tell you that that's really true. So the second thing is that, so baseline done, and then we started on how to implement it now. So first thing was just everybody says, okay, online, right? That's the buzzword. Online solves everything. So online, okay, we would go take the training to the online. That was the plan. We did it. We have wonderful teachers in Felix who does miracle. They have their own job, the day job, difficult job, and that time COVID is still on, so they were doing all the detailed work to continue the offline classes for their own children. Whoever is a teacher, they knew how difficult it was. And that, beside that, they also started this online classes, bi-weekly online classes. So all these 500 teachers divided in groups and all, and actually implementing this activity-based program, putting the video instruction, weekly understanding. We started that, interactions, groups. But we realized that is not enough. Even that is not enough to really take the real power of this pedagogy, power of these two books, and power of this learning and the credentials that Nanritam Felix School has. Because remember, the whole thing is we will not compromise on quality. That's the driving force. So what we started, we realized, I think that is the novel thing. We actually created, to empower the teachers, I would say we created a comprehensive and accountable teachers training and empowerment system. Totally. What is that? Out of those 500 teachers, we are hoping that we know if we can move fast, or if we have the capacity and other things with us, we can do it. We will be moving by this year and 1,000 teachers, reaching up to 50,000 students soon. So the system, what we did, we took out of that group of teachers, 500 teachers, we found the anchor teachers from each school, probably 2 or 3 representative teachers of them. We call them anchor teachers. So we started taking them, an extra program we put, that every 2 months or 3 months, we'll bring those anchor teachers to this Nanritam campus, who will run 2-3 days residential hand-on workshops, where all these teachers from all the schools will come in one place, they'll interact. Our Nanritam teachers, mentors will coach them, train them, they'll work together, team building, and all these things will happen. We already did, first one we did in March, that workshop. It was grandly successful. We just completed the second one yesterday, for 2 days workshop, we just completed yesterday. And beside and the idea is this anchor teachers at the 10 will cascade the knowledge as a trainer, train the trainers to the other 500 teachers as a partner of them, and implement it, while we'll continue this online bi-weekly trainings and whatever instruction we have. We have mentors aligned to those anchor teachers from Felix School, so they are continuously helping them, whatever. We have WhatsApp forum, etc. for 24/7 for interaction and discussion. So just online alone was not the solution. You have to have the face, you have to have the people, you have to have the passion, and the passion has to be felt on the ground. So that's the whole ethos, and that's the foundation of this whole program. So now what we are doing, those training are continuing, and we are now seeing that training, that work is fastly percolating to the remotest of the corner, and that's just heartening. Really heartening to see how that is happening. The examples are coming. Those teachers doesn't all of them do not have the BA degrees, master degrees. They're probably running schools and learning centers under the sky, below a tree. Unbelievable situation for 3 to 7 or 8 years, boys and girls probably under the same place working. But things are happening. Slowly but surely, we do sense the change. I think we just ran the 2 days workshop with this anchor teachers, completed yesterday, and we did some feedback sessions where they just came, and again, Priyanka did the phenomenal job by bringing them together. And they basically demonstrated how they're implementing this pedagogy, which is novel to them, and how they're successful. It was really wonderful. Of course, this is not something, it's not a relief, just a flood relief work. We have to be there, we have to be with them, we'll continue that. And we are now tracking how that is progressing. So that's the broadly what it is. A couple of pictures. Quickly, that was from our first anchor sessions. Was wonderful things happened for 3 days. We just completed the second one recently. Here is some pictures how those are being implemented at the grassroots. I don't want to play the YouTubes and stuff, but some of our guests will the opportunity to visit a few centers. But this is an amazing story. I mean, what I'm doing next. So as we have this EFA moment as a picked up, of course we'll continue to do other work. We'll take it forward. Some additional verticals have naturally has cropped up with it. One such thing is the supporting the high school science students of EFA community. As we have reached out to this EFA community, we recognize there are a lot of senior students within those learning centers or the schools who have the desire to study science or are studying science, but really do not have the full support and things that some would require to really pursue science or the interest in science. So I think all the teachers here were felicitated earlier. Again, there was an unwritten call. I mean, in a short time, within 5 or 7 days, all the great science teachers of this area and the universities and the colleges and the principals and the science centers, they all responded to the call almost immediately. And we have started a program where the senior science class students, 9, 10, 11, can come, who doesn't have any facilities, who can come here, and we can stay in Unwritten campus for 2-3 days, study science using the laboratories, and all those teachers, hats off to them, all my respect to them, they have then volunteered to provide their great services to provide science education to these children who would be otherwise would not get it. This is a new one. When we hear so much about the business with education, so much stuff, how some teachers are kind of selling knowledge, they're doing private tuition, all these teachers, all these professors, the principals, they could have do that time for earning money would be the only thing. Here is again a call from non-rhythm, and they all felt this is a call, we need to respond. So we have started that science program. Our idea is we have to go on to up to 100 students for that one, very specifically. And another thing happened. Madam is here. Madam Ezio called the non-rhythms EFA program, and she arranged one workshop with some government schools here. So 120 odd government school head primary teachers joined that, and we had a workshop there for a whole day. One half was for how to do the class management, and the other half the books that we have, and around that. So collecting experience from that too, and that probably would give another nucleus to take it forward, further expansion as we do. The next, please. So just a picture here, how the supporting EFA science students, EFA community is building. April 30th was the first session happened with those science students here, with the help of all the great teachers, science teachers, as mentioned earlier. So, again, it's a rapid planning. Everywhere in non-rhythm that happens. You have an idea, you don't just stay on that. That is the In our industrial world, we have a vocabulary called analysis to paralysis. I think that doesn't anywhere you'll find an iota of that in this organization. So you thought about it, made a call, the right people joined in, you move on, implementation done, we are moving on. That's the story of Darjeeling, that's the story of EFA, that's the story of the science thing. Next slide. So this is another picture. As I said, there was a workshop done in the just for the introducing the EFA's objective and ESS perspective together with the classroom management, which is also another element of our overall education management, classroom management. Anyway, so that also happened. The last slide, please. So that's at the end. Sorry for holding you for a long time. I know that you're all eagerly waiting for Kaushik's speech. So basically expand, scale up the core initiatives of this literacy numeracy or the similar institution. We have already done it, so we'll expand that in that way. We'll bring more relevant contents for the core targeted group, student teachers, colloquial English, class management, child psychology, computational thinking. We'll bring those. And we'll create and implement new contents as we go for next date's conceptual foundation on literacy, mathematics, science, social science, history, etc., and expand the science program. But one thing I must say, nothing would have been possible, none written, and the wonderful people that help every day. Those teachers, those remote teachers, they are rooted in the community, seeing their enthusiasm, seeing their ability, their interest, and the absorb and take is unbelievable. I mean, this session completed yesterday, 2 days. Some of those teachers came from very remote Sundarban area because we have 10 districts in the program. They started their journey with almost 18 hours before. They from Sundarban, they came to Howrah station, take a night train, arrived here. I mean, we didn't pay them. They have that urge to do things. So this is also refreshing. When you have so much negative things here and there, things cannot be done, people don't want to do stuff. It is that's the ethos, that's the foundation of this program, that's the foundation of Nanrita. We'll continue to expand on it. Thank you very much for listening to me so much.
Thank you, all of you. Now we come to the main part of the program. Sir's talk on India's economy and the role of education, past, present, and what lies ahead. After Sir finishes his talk, we will be taking up questions if they are relevant to the subject, today's topic. So, Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope my voice is carrying. Otherwise, I'll go up there. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to address. I've now spent just a little bit more than 24 hours in Para with Namritam and get a bit of an illusion of the world, everything being optimistic and good in the world. I know it is an illusion. You go back and face reality, but that's the truth about Namritam, that it does inspire one. My memories go back to 2012, almost 10 years, because it was in December. I believe I came here for the first time. I had a chance meeting with Ranjana and Bharati and then came here. I was just totally taken in. By that time, the main activity was the eye hospital. I remember meeting Rupak over there and seeing this hospital. It seemed so good. I was having some little eye problems, going to Cornell Weil and all kinds of places, but insisted that Dr. Vishal should take a look, do a checkup for me. And that was my first actual full introduction to Namritam, having my eyes tested and meeting the people in school, which had just about started. Since then, I should thank you. I mean, this time being here, the principal, Ruma Guhon Nyogi, the enthusiasm from Priyanka. There were people that I was waiting to meet, whom I had corresponded with and digitally been in touch with. Sharada Prasad, for instance, here, Shomorda. I'd exchanged emails and messages with him. It's been just wonderful seeing them. Hilda Peacock, madam. About her, again, we had been a little bit in touch by Zoom and technologically, and I was hearing wonderful things about her. It's just really, for me, just very, very good to meet all of you. I should also mention that meeting Dr. Shormila Chandra, Manav Yagnik, and several others, Shamol, Shubarna, these are people I've known from a long time ago. It's been just wonderful for me and very, very inspiring. Let me get straight away into from the cheerful topic of Namritam and the Felix School to the more depressing topic about the state of the world economy. Few words about that, and then I want to dwell on India and the education sector in particular. The world economy is going through a very difficult phase. All the data coming out from different parts of the world, and if this is not one particular country or another, the situation is grim. Several things were causing it. One is a bit of a long run feature, long run meaning over 30, 40 years. And these are the only two PowerPoint pictures I will show you. Is it coming up? The next page. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
You can go straight to the picture of the যদি না হয় আমি মুখে বলবো, it's actually no problem. Yeah. Let's go for the next one. Okay, this will do. Yeah. So see, over here, what you will see is a dramatic decline of a kind which is very rare. If you take a nation's full income and the share of the income that goes to workers as wages and other small forms of payment, that from, I've got the figure here from 1975, roughly from then, it's a steady decline. The share of the income, that nation's full income that goes to workers is declining in all rich countries and also in upper middle income countries. For instance, there you can see Australia in 1975 of the national income, 66.5% would go to workers as their income. This is now down to 54.2%. This was actually 2015, it's gone down even further for sure. Take a look at Japan. 77% of the nation's income used to go to workers as their income. That's now down to 59.8%, and there are other data. If we go to the next page, that is just a visual. The next page is going to be a visual of the same thing. You will see the share earned by workers going down. Yeah, that's the picture. It's very rare for this to happen. It happened during the Industrial Revolution, 1750s. It's happening now that share is declining. This is giving rise to a lot of problems around the world. For instance, a lot of political anger as well. In rich countries, the working classes are very, very upset about the shrinkage that is taking place. This, by the way, is not happening that sharply in low-wage countries like India, because we can still provide workers sufficiently cheap to outcompete with machines, but that's going to change. One thing that COVID did, I will draw attention to, and then I want to come to India very quickly, is with the rise of digital technology, we've seen this in the past. When new technology becomes available, for that technology to seep into society, for people to begin to use the technology takes a very long time. Industrial revolution, the technology was seeping in over 40, 50 years, it's getting spread out. But think now of digital technology of Zoom, WebEx. Over the last 2 years, we were forced to learn by using it because there was no option because of the COVID-19 crisis. In economics, the very, very famous economist, sort of guru of the discipline, Kenneth Arrow, had talked about a term called learning by doing. That the best way to learn something is by actually using your hands and doing it. Arrow wrote it up as a theoretical model with mathematics and all that. But the Zoom technology, the virtual technology, the way we have learned over the last 2 years is absolutely amazing. I think of just a year and a half ago, trying to take a lecture with students scattered all over the world, some sitting in China, some sitting in Cornell, some sitting in India because they were frozen in different places. I would be fumbling with the technology. Now I'm completely comfortable using Zoom and doing it. Travel, earlier we would do elaborate long travels. Now we are having meetings from people meeting from different places, all using this technology. This speeding up is also causing challenges because the digital technology which is displacing labor is coming in even faster because we are getting used to it. And this is a challenge that we will all have to face. And this is why novel forms of education is going to play a very big role. But let me switch now to India and give you a little bit of the background of the Indian journey. Actually, before that, one more point about the current situation. The current situation all over the world is quite grim. About India, I can tell you, see, in this year, 21-22, the fiscal year, India's growth rate is expected to be 8.7%, which is very high in the world when it's all down. But you have to remember and be realistic, India's neither at the top of the world nor at the bottom of the world, as some people would say. This is the correction you have to make. 8.7% growth this year. One major reason for that is the previous year, there was such a big negative growth. If you fall into a pit, when you're climbing out, that is growth, but growth from the bottom of the pit. Once you take the 2 years together and look at the annual growth rate, even with the 8.7% this year, the annual growth rate over the 2-year period is 0.8%. There are countries which are doing worse than that, so India is not at the bottom. There are countries which are doing better than that. China over the 2-year period is 5.1%. This year we are beating China, but we are climbing out of a drop of a kind that China did not have. So 5.1% China, Vietnam 2.7%, Bangladesh 5.1%. There are many countries which are in a negative territory, so India is somewhere in the middle. It's not on top of the world, not at the bottom of the world, but you have to flatten that out, otherwise it's meaningless celebrating. The other thing that you have to remember, which for India, India's inflation is a bit of a global problem. Not caused by us, it's coming from the outside, but we are suffering, we have to handle it, but it is coming from outside. Where India is doing particularly badly, and this cannot be placed as an international phenomenon, is youth unemployment in India is very, very high. World Bank has put out data whereby youth unemployment in India is roughly 25%. And whereas other countries, I can give you some of the numbers over here. Indonesia is 14.5%, Malaysia 14%, Bangladesh 14.8%, India 24.9%, like some Middle Eastern countries, Turkey, a couple of places like that are like India or worse, and troubled regions. This is troubling also because you have to understand when you say youth unemployment, unemployed is 25%, it does not mean of young people 25% are unemployed. It means of people, young people who are looking for jobs. So not even the ones who go to college, they are not treated as unemployed. Of those who are looking for jobs, 25% are not finding it, which is a very high figure. So that's the current situation. I want to give you a little bit of the background story, the story of India. India's growth rate historically used to be very, very poor. right up to 1980, from 1947 to 1980, if you look at India's growth rate, it would be roughly 3.5% per annum. 3%, 3.5%. India's population growth rate, which has now come down, but that time population growth was 2%, 2.5%. GDP growing by 3.5%, which means per capita income growing barely by 1% per annum, right from 1947 to 1980. Change took place after that, but before that, I'll give you 1 year where there is a bit of a lesson. If you go before that, there was 1 year where India grew more than 9% in 1 year. Now India's grown a couple of times over 9%, but in the earlier times, 1975-76, India grew by 9.2%. That year, if you're familiar with Indian history, was a very, very important year. That was the year of the emergency declared by Indira Gandhi, and authoritarian control, totalitarian control can give you a short-run boost. And that year, India got it. There were newspaper reports that Indian trains were suddenly running on time. And there were other benefits. India grew by 9.2%. But don't for a moment make a mistake of thinking that that's a solution and authoritarian rule. By next year, India plummeted to 1.2%. And 3-4 years later, was India's one of the worst years, minus 5.1% growth, which would be beaten only once, year before last, when it was minus 6.6%. So that boost from Indira Gandhi's authoritarian rule was a 1 year, so there are no lessons over there. Fortunately, Indira Gandhi called an election, had a fair election 2 years later, and got roundly defeated. So democracy was back again in India, celebrating. There are countries in the world which have had these episodes. United States in the McCarthy period was about to come to a grinding halt, with every second person being called un-American and a communist and being harassed by the state and individuals. Fortunately, once again, the McCarthy period was a 4-year period. The American economy would have been finished. It came out of that, bounced back once again. So now, after that, India's growth, I talked about 1980. There was a deep crisis, you will probably know, in 1991. For me, that time I used to teach at the Delhi School of Economics. Till before that, I used to be a complete abstract economist. My interests were abstract economic theory. 1991, maybe because of the Indian crisis, I started writing articles in newspapers and tracking the Indian economy closely. The crisis of 1991 is quite interesting, and I'll tell you a little bit because it has some connection with Bangla literature. I will point to that just now. See, 1991, what happened was the Gulf War. Some of you will remember. United States got involved, and Kuwait was invaded. There was a war in the Gulf region. The reason why India got affected was, in those days, which is no longer true, India's main source of foreign exchange income was remittance from abroad. Not profit being earned, Indian firms, etc., those were negligible. It's remittance. And remittance, not from Indian engineers and IT workers. It was from Indian workers. India's main foreign exchange would come from Indian workers in the Middle East. That suddenly started dropping because the Middle East was in crisis because of the Gulf War. One technique that India was using, which has been used by Latin American countries as the resources were falling, is you borrow money. So India would borrow money from one agency, but when the time would come to repay, you don't have the money to repay because the country is in crisis. You borrow from someone else and pay this person back. Then again, when you have to pay the second person back, you borrow from someone else and pay this person back. This is called loan juggling. There are big corporations which do that. There are countries which do that. Latin American countries, Peru, 1981, used to do loan juggling. I borrow from you, use it up. When the time comes to repay, I borrow from someone else and repay that and juggle the loan around. India was doing a little bit of that. The reason I bring this up is one of the best loan juggling story is Shibram Chakraborty's story, which actually, when I was writing this book for MIT Press on development economics, very early I did a short translation of Shibram's story, as an illustration of loan juggling, which is one of the most clean illustrations of what loan juggling is. For those of you who do not know the story, it's such a delight, I must tell you very briefly. It's written in first person. Shibram wakes up one morning. The details I might get wrong, but the gist of the story is this. Let's say one Wednesday morning, Shibram gets up. He desperately needs 500 rupees. Where will he get it from? He starts thinking he needs it. Then he remembers in school, there was a good-natured chap called Govardhan. So he says, from Govardhan, I'll be able to get 500 rupees out of him. So he goes to Govardhan and in the beginning starts chatting with him, saying, Govardhan, you remember we were such good friends. We have not met for a long time, but I think of you every day. You're such a wonderful person. After all that preamble, he said, Govardhan, I need 500 rupees from you. Today is Wednesday. I'll give it back to you on Saturday. So he takes 500 rupees, and as Shibram says, like with all good loans, it is immediately used up on a variety of things. So when Saturday comes, Shibram wakes up in crisis. It's time to repay the loan to Govardhan, but he doesn't have the 500 rupees anymore. What will he do? He remembers another friend from school, a good-natured person, Harshavardhan. So he goes to Harshavardhan and again sweet talks him that we were such good friends. I keep thinking about you. We've never met. Harshavardhan, I need 500 rupees from you. Today is Saturday, and I promise you, you'll get it back on Wednesday. Harshavardhan, good fellow, after some time is persuaded, gives him 500 rupees. He goes running to Govardhan and says, Govardhan, I'm a man of my word. I said I'll give it back on Saturday. Here is 500 rupees. Govardhan is quite happy. But then, of course, Wednesday comes and he has to pay back Harshavardhan. Where will he get the money from? He goes running to Govardhan and tells Govardhan, you've seen, I give back the money. I need it once more. Today is Wednesday, you'll get it back on Saturday. Takes 500, gives it to Harshavardhan, and then it becomes every Saturday and Wednesday, take from Harshavardhan, give to Govardhan, take from Govardhan, give to Harshavardhan, and the original 500 he's used up. This is exactly the way some corporations and some countries work. The end of this story has nothing to do with economics, but it's so delightful, I should tell you. One day, Shibram is walking on the street when he suddenly is in sheer panic. He sees Govardhan coming from one side, Harshavardhan coming from another side. For a moment, he thinks he's going to be caught and he'll be in trouble. But he's intelligent enough. He calls them, says that it's such a pleasure to meet my two school friends together. I'm feeling thrilled. In fact, I have one little suggestion from you, which will keep your situation completely unchanged, which will save me a lot of time. Every Wednesday, Govardhan gave Harshavardhan 500 rupees. Every Saturday, Harsha gave Govardhan 500 rupees. Keep doing this and just leave me out of it, and he runs away. That's the end of this delightful story. This is something of what was happening when Manmohan Singh became finance minister. India was in deep crisis, and there was a time, I remember, in June 1991, when India had enough foreign exchange for 13 days of imports. Imports would stop after that. When India had to go to IMF, which is very humiliating. You go to IMF for money, IMF bails you out. But there were very important reforms which were struck. There were people who did criticize that not enough was done about inequality and such things. And I personally believe that the level of inequality today in India is absolutely shameful. It is something that in future, if we get out of this, we will look back at today's inequality and be ashamed the way Americans feel ashamed about slavery, or they should feel ashamed about slavery, or we feel ashamed about untouchability practice in the past. Today's inequality is at that level. But at that point of time, it is a financial crisis, and India put in very important reforms. And there were among the reforms were license permit, which was crippling India. In the name of managing everything, for everything you needed a permit from the government. That was removed, and I think the license permit Raj needed to be removed. That was done. India, in the name of protecting the Indian economy, was raising the tariff rates. Goods coming in from abroad, you raise the tariff. reasonable tariffs you have to raise. But I remember one statement coming from the finance minister, which is stuck in my head when the reforms were announced. We are bringing the tariff ceiling down to 100%. There are not too many countries which can bring it down to 100%. You can raise it to 100%. It just shows where the tariff had gone. And then there was another reform, which is a little bit of economics, but commonsensical economics. India those days used to have very little foreign exchange reserves in the government's hand at all times. Foreign exchange was small, and for that reason, the Indian government had very strict rules. You can't take foreign exchange out of the country. And I remember even in my student days going abroad, there was a restriction of, I don't know, $25 or something like that. Very difficult to take foreign exchange out. So once you brought foreign exchange into India, you can't take foreign exchange out of India. But just think of it with business people, businessmen, businesswomen operating around the world. If you don't allow them to take foreign exchange out, the first thing they will do is not bring foreign exchange in. So it is a sad fact, but a true fact of life. You have to allow people to take foreign exchange out if you want them to bring it in the first place, the foreign exchange that they are earning. So the government of India changed the rules, making it much easier to take foreign exchange out. In the beginning, these things are very risky because the little foreign exchange may go out as soon as you allow. So the IMF was brought in to stand guard. If that happens, IMF will step in. You are allowed to take foreign exchange out. After that, what happened in India's foreign exchange reserves is a dramatic story. Roughly from 1993, India's foreign exchange reserves used to hover $5 billion to $7 billion. Over the next 20 years, that $5 to $7 billion went up to $300 billion. Once you allowed people to take out foreign exchange, they were beginning to bring in, and the rules and regulations have changed. I believe with all its faults, and there were faults, these were dramatic reforms, and you were seeing after that, India's real period of growth was 2003 to 2011. India was growing at about 8% per annum, which is among the world's 3-4 fastest growing economies in the world. There was 1 year where there was a big dip, 2008, which was the global financial crisis. There's a dip for 1 year. Otherwise, it's around 8% it's growing. After that, it's been ups and downs. Now, let me give you a little bit of the current thing, and then I'm going to move to education, and I want to just comment on that. The current situation, the deterioration started, I have to say, 2016. Up to 2016, actually, growth was picking up. 2016 onwards till 2020, each year's growth has been less than the previous year's growth, so it's been a step downwards after that. Since then, as last year, the growth has picked up again, 8.7%. Hopefully, the worst is behind us, and the Indian economy will begin to move further forward. Though I have to say personally also, I do worry that our society is becoming so polarized. Economists don't recognize the importance of politics and sociology and trust among human beings. But there are studies by historians, and there are studies in laboratories. There is a very famous study done in Israel, literally giving people money in laboratories for games they were playing. Groups that trust one another better, even in lab conditions, they begin to get wealthy faster. So trust in society is very difficult to define. But Francis Fukuyama has described cross-country data. Once trust gets eroded, investment rate goes down, and India's investment rate is going down. So there are these things, very complex, we have to attend to. As the global economy changes, where does the attention have to go? Here onwards, my expectation is, as I said, India's not right at the top, as some people will say. India's not right at the bottom, as some people will say. It's hovering somewhere in the middle. There will be new winners and new losers here onwards, because the global economy is changing so very dramatically. For the world, new policies are needed. One particular policy, this sounds like a radical suggestion, but I have been talking in several forums in United States, and there are economists who are beginning to talk about it. You have to think of this. See, I'll give it the example that I'm using in the United States. Outsourcing business. With the rise of digital technology, which is actually good news for a country like India, I think outsourcing is going to increase over the next couple of years hugely. And the reason is the digital technology was already there and was being used, but people have got so used to it. There are individual professors who are now telling me I should have a assistant or a secretary in a developing country with some English instead of here, because digitally I'll be in touch and that person can handle everything over there. So I feel this outsourcing is going to increase, and that actually does create a kind of hope that for a country like India that we can begin to use and do better. But this is not going to last for that long. The encroachment of technology is going to come in over here, and once that happens, it is going to be radical policies. And the one radical policy that I'm going to talk about is just talk, and I want to push it aside. It's related to this outsourcing. See, in United States, the workers in United States are very upset about outsourcing. And at one level, you can sympathize. I live most of my time in a small town, a town which does very well because Cornell University is there in Ithaca. But as soon as I go outside Ithaca into the small towns, which is much more plain, you can feel the pressures of globalization in these towns. People have become worse off and they are upset about that. But what I keep reminding people is every time work is outsourced to India or the Philippines or Africa somewhere, it is true that workers in India, the Philippines, Africa are benefiting. But that we cannot grudge. These workers are even worse off, and we have to, in today's world, take an international view. But one thing I keep reminding Americans, you can't forget, those workers are benefiting, but also American profit is shooting up. So there is also a tension between American workers' condition and the profits in America. And I personally believe that there has to be a certain amount of profit sharing. A part of the profit in a company ought to be distributed to workers as though they are shareholders of this company. And I also believe that actually at the level of the country, as work begins to become smaller, workers should have the right to a certain fraction of the profit being generated in the country, which is becoming a bigger and bigger share. The workers should virtually be shareholders of that. And make no mistake, I'm not saying that the profit motive should be cut out. The profit motive is important. It keeps an economy going. But we don't need the level of inequality we have today in the world to keep the economy going. You can collapse that inequality hugely through profit sharing and keep the economy going. These are matters that are important for India, important for the world, but not specific to India. Let me turn here now. What will happen here onwards? If we manage these radical reforms, well and good. Or if we look the other way, saying these reforms are too radical and don't go in for it, that will be unfortunate. One more historical example. What appears radical now will not look radical 10 years down the road once we've adopted it. The example that comes to mind is, in 1842, after the Industrial Revolution had caused similar tensions as we face today, a new law was brought in which that time was considered shockingly radical. The income tax. There were conservatives in Britain saying it's shocking. How can the government take away a part of my income which I've earned? Now we think of that as natural, and I think it's right that a fair amount of income from the rich should be taken away and distributed to the poor. I believe also there should be wealth tax and redistribution over there, because one thing you must remember, we keep saying that hard work makes people better off. But the number of children who are born into poverty, which has nothing to do with their hard work, because at that point of time, there is no work hard or less hard work they've done. They are being born into poverty. These we have to equalize. We have to keep the profit motive going, but we have to have these redistributions. But these are big reforms. There are smaller things, and this has to do with education. I feel the two sectors which will be important, and that will, in the future, we will see the front runners among emerging economies, and there will be changes. Economies which were running very fast could begin to stumble, and new ones can pick up. This has happened historically several times, could happen again. The two sectors which will become very important to my mind are health is going to be very important, education is going to be very important. In slightly different ways, let me explain the health a little bit. If the economy is growing GDP, we usually people think of faster growth means more cars, more aeroplanes, more fancy clothes. But GDP, and this is mainstream economics will also tell you, good health is also a part of GDP. Anything which you value, which you're willing to pay for, is a part of GDP. So if our life expectancy goes up, if some of the killer diseases begin to go away, pain goes away, these are expansions of GDP. And I feel if we do manage this crisis well and come out at the other end with much faster growth, which is what happened after the Industrial Revolution. A lot of turmoil, at the end of it, the whole world economy was going faster. If we come out, the growth will be much faster than what we are seeing now, but the constituents of the growth will be very different. We will be consuming much better health, greater longevity. We will be consuming more art, more music. These are all consumptions. And that GDP is going to grow more rapidly. So health is going to be important. And there's another thing about health. A lot of health work will not quickly go over to machines, especially the creation of new cures, new medicines. This is all innovative work. That will remain with human beings, and we will have to get a disproportionate amount of society going into that sector. The other sector which is going to be important, and that is education, because routine work is going to be taken away. So human beings will have to do unusual non-routine work. A lot of it is creative work, research type work. And right now that sounds esoteric, but that will have to become commonplace. Even young people, and today, I mean, Nandritam is a good place to talk about this. Talking with the students, I see a creative spark and urge of a kind which I see only in the best American schools. I don't know European schools very well, but I do know American schools. You see that kind of creativity in these schools, where students are being given a lot of space, new kinds of thinking, challenging even authority. I saw someone over saying that what should teachers do? There's a little bit of instruction about teachers. You should be encouraged to think, because it should be a friendly, cooperative atmosphere. But that is what creative thinking is about. I feel very heartened by this. The nature of education is going to change, and India has had pluses and minuses on this. One failure of Indian education, and this goes back to the 1950s, 60s, 70s. Contrary to what we were saying, our basic literacy being spread among the masses was very poor. India's literacy rate at the time of independence is 17% of India was literate. In 1991, 52% of India is literate. By 1991, if you compare India's literacy rate with sub-Saharan Africa, much poorer countries, most of them are slightly ahead of India. Other countries like South Korea, which used to have the same, virtually same per capita income as India in 1990, had gone way past, surging ahead. So India had done very poorly in terms of basic literacy, no doubt about that. You have to admit the mistakes you're making now. That's the only way to improve. But one area where India did do very well is higher education. And in fact, in America, when Indians go, people assume that the country across the board is getting that kind of education, but that is of course not true. But Indian universities, the IITs, the medical colleges, the IIMs, all started a long time ago, were actually quite amazing. And this I can tell you from my personal experience when I used to be a professor at the Delhi School of Economics, my early days, say 1980s. When you go to an international conference in France or Germany or United States, the dominant people over there are the Americans and the Europeans. But I used to always say that the only emerging economy or developing country where you did not feel out of place in these gatherings was India. Because there would always be a largish number of Indians, and we felt pretty much on par, that our university education was pretty much what you had got in the best places over there. So our top end was doing very well, and you can see that today in the United States, the penetration of Indians at the top corporate level, for instance, absolutely across the board, advisors in the government from health to other things. Indians are there across the board. And this is the advantage of the long run higher education that was done very, very well in India. And we have to keep this up going. But the school education we have to improve. And it has to be creative education. Just learning by heart page after page is not going to work. And I don't want to give Nanritam a swollen head, but the kind of model that you're doing here and in the education for all, you're trying to spread out. If we can spread this kind of an education across the board in the country, that will be a very big help. I don't want to take too much time because time is it's late in the evening. But let me give you a little bit of a historical example of the power of education. I personally believe that though hard power, the military power, the capacity to drop bombs attracts international attention, the real strength of a country is soft power. And India, fortunately, was on a path of great soft power. In the world, when you go to different meetings, you felt this was a country in terms of thought, in terms of intellectual development, was an amazing country, correcting for the fact that much poorer than the rich countries, but it was on that path. Historical examples. 1920, if you take the per capita incomes of different countries in the world, Argentina was among the world's top 10 countries, among the top 10 richest countries. It was in fact ahead of Germany and France. And there are lovely articles, if you American magazines and all writing, saying that it is clear that over the next 10, 20 years, Argentina is going to be the dominant economy in the world. Argentina, of course, over the next 10, 20 years, Argentina story crashed. United States surged ahead, per capita income and otherwise. What is the cause? Lots of analysis of what happened. Why did Argentina backfire? My belief, and this is close to what people write about, there are two things which are written about. Argentina saw a period of hyper-nationalism. And I have to say, for me, again, and this is the sort of teaching of Rabindranath Tagore, some of our earliest thinkers, our commitment has to be world. Wherever there is suffering, that is human suffering. So there has to be one collective concern. I know that is too idealistic, we can't jump to that, but we cannot be hyper-nationalist. Of course, my first commitment is to my country. I want my country to do well, and through that spread the message to the world. But once you have hyper-hawkish nationalism, Argentina developed that. And under a military rule, and you get it in plain simple data, tariff rates beginning to climb. Argentina before that used to take in a lot of immigrants. So educated people from around the world used to pour into Argentina, suddenly all blocked off. So that is one factor which has been pointed out, but I think there was another factor probably even more important. United States, we pay attention to America's hard power, but America was nurturing its universities in a way which was quite unbelievable, giving the space to the universities and research centers. And the surging of the universities is, I think, what gave power to American economy. I remember some years ago, I had gone to China to Xiamen University, and a Chinese journalist coming and asking very softly, almost as if she wanted to know the secret of India, saying, "Sir, can you tell us how does a country get soft power rather than hard power? That is culture, that is development of the mind. How do you get that?" Of course, there is no easy solution to that. Another example of this kind is South Korea. South Korea in 1960 had a per capita income slightly higher than India, and there are American documents saying that South Korea is a basket case. India will probably take off, South Korea will remain a basket case, and we'll have to provide them with financial support. Let us be ready for that. But it's a small country, we can provide that. The story changed. South Korea began surging ahead. By 1990, I know South Korea was some 15 times richer than India. Per capita income had gone ahead. It is about to overtake Japan in terms of per capita income. There's one very notable feature of South Korea. Intellectual property per capita being taken out in the world, South Korea has become the world's leader. The highest number of intellectual property per capita is being generated in South Korea, about double the number Then the second highest country, which is Japan. Intellectual property creation is second highest in Japan. South Korea has beaten Japan widely. After that comes United States, Germany, China, other countries come, but South Korea surged ahead. Another thing interesting, I think they are overdoing it. School teachers is among the highest paid professions. It's like lawyers and doctors, school teachers. And there are some school teachers, there are stories which have been written who are like rock stars in South Korea. And I think they are overdoing that a little bit. But one thing you have to remember about teaching and the value of teaching, this Abhijit Banerjee has a very early paper on this, and there are other papers written. There are some Israeli authors who have written about this. Typically, for most activities, we value the worth of that reasonably correctly. The market economy values it. But teacher value is underappreciated for the following reason. And there are these theoretical models and empirical studies. The teacher will educate one person, and of course, that person is willing to pay the teacher a reasonable amount, and the teacher gets paid. But think of the benefit. That person who has been educated is going to have a more educated son and daughter. And that son and daughter, the children, will have more educated children again. So a good quality education imparted to one has what in economics we call externalities. The next generation will get it, and the generation after that will get it. I've got one Brazilian student and one American PhD student of mine. They have actually tracked this with Brazilian data, that as soon as you get better education coming, over 40, 50 years, you'll see the effect of that. Now, when someone provides a service where the major benefit is not got by the person who gets the service, but others, you don't pay that person adequately. This is called an externality in economics. Teaching has one of the greatest externalities. I'm not telling teachers for a moment to become greedy now and begin to ask for more, because there is some pure satisfaction in teaching, but I do believe that at the level of the country, this is something that has to be stepped up, and not just salary, you get a salary and sit at home. You have to work very hard with it to impart this. But the importance of the education sector you see over there. And let me give one more historical example which fascinates me. I'm now very taken in by the Greek writers and philosophers. And that's why this morning, when one of the students was talking about magnet and magnus, about one of, I learned from, I didn't even know about this. I learned from one of your students that it comes from the Greek magnus, about magnets. At that time I got reminded of a great story, which is the truth, about hard power and soft power. The Peloponnesian War, which is the war between Sparta and Athens, that was won by Sparta. Sparta was a military state, very strong state. Sparta won the war, but at a one important level, Athens won the world. After losing the war, Athens did lose the war, but Sparta was soon beginning to crumble. That hard state of just militaristic correction was not functioning well anymore. And Athens, after that, Socrates is 399 BC, is the death of Socrates. There's Plato, there is Aristotle, knowledge being generated out of this. Athens lost the war because it didn't have enough hard power, but it had a huge amount of intellectual power, and in many ways it won the world over after that. So I feel you have to be realistic, be idealistic, and sitting back will not do. So a country does need military, you do need strength. I don't want to put that out. But education, the quality of the mind, in the long run, these things play a big role. And I will also end by saying, as an economist, we keep harping on economic growth. But there is something more than that in life. There are now philosophers who are writing about moral progress. Just like you can have economic progress, you can develop better, stronger morals, greater commitment to other human beings, empathy and kindness. That is the kind of growth that we want. So I hope there are many students over here as you go out into life. Yes, you have to be hard-headed, you need the mind to analyze, but keep these larger ambitions beyond just narrow economic growth alive. Thank you very much. প্রশ্ন উত্তর হবে?
There you
Currently, we see a very currently we see a very
Sorry, I missed your. Okay.
yeah. Currently, we see a very annoying trend in villages that the government run primary schools are running without students, and and the people they are pay spending money for putting them to English so-called English medium schools. So how to reverse it? Because ultimately the quality of education is not that good.
No, Dr. Sheel, this is such a serious question. Um, and not just that, I'll go back a little bit. When I was at the World Bank did a study, Michael Kramer and others, where it was a very well controlled study, where in many countries they sent people randomly in government schools to see how many teachers were present. And India had a shockingly high teacher absence rate in government schools. The teachers were not there, just not there. They were away. So there is that problem. The primary, and you want the school education, not just the private schools. Very importantly, you want government schools to be good quality and run well. Little bits of hope, I have to say, in Delhi. There are reports coming out that the government-run schools are beginning to do well, and some people are actually giving up private schools to go to those government schools, where in fact you pay less but get better education. So this is a huge task, and education is something that cannot be left to the private sector to do. With universities, there's scope for that. Though I personally believe private universities, I feel, do have a role, but not for-profit universities. There's a big difference between the two. There are in America there are some for-profit universities which are not admirable at all in any way, but there are private universities. But at the level of the school, either it has to be government schools or schools which have a bit of a missionary zeal. People are just want to provide excellence of education, which I can see Ramakrishna Mission over here, which is Nanditam over here. These have provided excellent service in terms of school. So that's just very important. And to reach the masses in India. So that's all I can say. And it is indeed very unfortunate what's happening. If, as you do this work, for instance, education for all, if you can also do a little bit of a survey so that the kind of thing, Dr. Sheel, that you're talking about as an economist, I always like it once we begin to get some statistics that this percentage of schools are running without students, students are not going there, teachers are not going there, that turns out to be very useful for us. So at some point, if we have data on that, will be very good. Yeah.
At the same time, there is serious issue of dropouts, especially in Sundarban areas. I am not aware about the figures here. A few years back, I wrote an article on eye health in Sundarban, and I was looking at the references. And to my surprise, I found in Canning Block, Canning is not that remote. In Canning Block, the school dropout in upper primary, forget about high school, was more than 50%.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that is happening right now because, as I was saying, youth unemployment being high, inflation is high, so we don't have enough data. But for the poorer people in rural areas, it must be a very, very hard time. So for many of them, the children have to drop out, help a little bit at home, and do other things. So it is affecting, and this can't be solved just by looking at the schools. This is a bit of an economy-wide problem. If the suffering is too great, they will not be going to school. So this is a very difficult time for all over. But I feel we have to treat this as a more urgent problem. The problem of poverty, and the poverty is hitting from right from middle classes. It's beginning to hit because the job situation is so bad, which is coming back with it. So it's a whole package that we have to attend to.
Yeah, I have actually two questions. One is you talked of morality in education, and if we also include in morality, connect with the community that we grow up in. Now these are essential and these are missing today. Now, is there a way to do it in a structured manner and to measure progress in these? The other question that I have is there's a lot of debate between English education and mother tongue education. Now, mother tongue education keeps us rooted to our culture, but I believe English education also allows you to get a good and respectable livelihood faster. So how do we resolve this conflict?
Yeah, very good. Deep questions. Let me take on both of them. The morality part formally is difficult, but it's not impossible. This is too technical for going into now. I've been interacting with a group of American philosophers very interested in this, on actually giving a little bit of concrete shape to morality. It's how concerned are you about other people? And this does combine with relatively academic work. There is a little bit of game theory where you can actually show that once you develop empathy for the other side, actually both of you begin to do better. And the laboratory experiment that I was talking about, that's not quite morality, that's about trust. There are again these were done, as I mentioned earlier, in Israel, in literally in laboratory it was done, that groups that were inspired into greater trust do better. So there are ways in which we are trying to measure that, and it's also intellectually a complex problem because I've recently been working on if lots of people have the moral intention, that may not always translate into a moral outcome. That's unfortunately the fact of life, that each one of you can have the moral intention, but there's something about the group chemistry that can destroy the outcome. So yes, it's an intricate problem, but I feel having the moral compass in our head is a first step. I mean, a society where people don't have this moral compass are completely selfish. The society is doomed, and even if the society does well, I will have very little sympathy for that society. There's something unpalatable about that society. Your other question about English and mother tongue is very interesting. I Bangla is my mother tongue. It's important to me. I have to say it's gone rusty with time, but I grew up on Rabindranath, Bankim, Nazrul. These were part of my education, and I value this greatly, and I feel it gives me a cultural rooting. English is an instrumental language, and once you've, of course, learned it, there is culture there also you're getting. But in this, you have to be practical. You need the mother tongue, but you also need English in today's world to integrate one with the world and do better. I feel one mistake that was done in Bengal, the period when English was demoted in school, I feel this has done a lot of long run damage because in the job market, you need it, whether you like it or not. And the best lesson of that I learned is the one Chinese university I go to quite often, Xiamen University. They have switched over to English education. English language instruction is in English, not because of love of English, but pure realism. That you want these students going out of here to be able to work anywhere in the world, and in global trade and business, they should do well. So it's a very mercenary decision. The other example that I give is Germany. If you go back 50, 60 years ago, a lot of research in economics was being done in German. Some fundamental papers were being written in German. And the Germans realized after some time that it's a bit of a tussle. If you continue to write only in German, yes, it enriches the language, it's a good feeling, but you will not get the attention of the English-speaking world. And they made a pragmatic decision. In the world, English is the dominant language, so we better begin to publish our papers in English. And now the top German scholars are publishing in English for the practical reasons. So over here, you have the nurturing of the culture, very important, and we don't want to lose our huge cultural roots, but you have to keep up both going.
Okay. I also have two questions. The first one is that we just got a new education policy, where it is mentioned that we should spend 6% of our GDP for education. But I find that in 1968 also the same was proposed, but we could not do uh, better in these so many years. So if the politicians, industries value education, why our country has failed in investing this much in education? This is my first question. And my second question is that if I remember 25, 30 years back, the education system in China and India were mostly uh, at par. But how come China become so developed in terms of intellectual property and everything, and they are doing so much better?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. So the percentage of money to be spent on education, of course, we use these often as a benchmark to organize around that. But as you say, we often write, first of all, we go aim for too little. We have to go for even higher. And that also we don't do. One, thing is, for politicians, ill-educated people are a great advantage. So they like that education should not spread too far because you can then take them for a ride very easily, very unfortunately. But I hope that in the longer interest of the country, in the long run, this will be corrected and we will spend more on education. And it's not just a question of spending more, it's also you need dedication. And dedication is, since you're bringing this up, and again standing in Manritam, I used to think I mentioned short time ago about teacher absence from class. If you turn to economists, they will immediately talk of incentives, financial incentives to keep the teachers in class. But financial incentive is not the only thing. I think of Delhi School of Economics, where I used to teach for many years. I taught for 17 years there. When I first joined, the chairman of the department was a bit of a legendary character, Mrinal Dr. Chaudhary. To get leave, you did not have to do anything. If you want to go away somewhere, Mrinal Da would tell us, you write a letter for a leave. If you get into trouble, I'll say, I forgot to give the letter. So you were given complete freedom to move away. If you had to go away for a day, complete freedom. But Delhi School of Economics, no one misused that. When you rarely needed to go somewhere, very little paperwork, we would go and come back. But our classes, we would teach no incentive for taking your class or not taking your class. Why? Because people have been motivated. If it's a noble job, you're taking pride in the work that you're doing. So a lot of it, we economists overemphasize the financial part of it. Yes, that plays a role. But a lot of it is also to do with motivation. So along with the money, we have to pay attention to that. Your second question on India and China is interesting. 1990s, actually in higher education, India was ahead of China. And if you looked at things like gross enrollment ratio, China was trailing behind India of the adult population, of the college-going population, the fraction going in India was very high. Those who had arrived at that stage, large number were going in. China has moved ahead since then. One more area where China has moved ahead of India, which is very unfortunate, and I feel India should actually work very hard on that, is attracting students from elsewhere in the world. Those days, India attracted a few, China attracted virtually no one. They would educate their own people. Now China is beginning to attract medical education, people from Africa going to China for education. India had an advantage on that. The English language is a bit of a global language. We had that, we could use it to teach. And I have argued many times that if your country can become a global hub of education, the benefit is immense. For Britain, United Kingdom, being the global hub of education, gave it global power and connection with the whole world. United States encourages people to come from all over because it is a kind of soft power for America. India has that scope, and this does not read apart from an initial investment. A state like Bengal, which used to have fantastic education, can become a global hub. And if it's a global hub, this is the model. Since you're provoking me into this, see, for a lot of middle-class American students, lower middle-class American students, American university expense is phenomenal. Provide them good education in India and say that for 4 years you come, and there are some simple things which are important. You can't say we'll give you a visa every 6 months. You have to say 4 years visa. Provide minimal quality of housing and all. Even if Americans don't come, there are many other countries where India, you can provide the same quality education for one third, one fourth, and make a profit here. If you do that, people will begin to come from elsewhere in the world. It's a slow start, but once it becomes a hub of education, the influence of this country begins to spread all across the world. And some people say that how can we do charity when we can't teach our own people? This is not charity at all. You're doing this for a low grade profit for people from the world to come here and get education and still benefit compared to what they would be paying in United States. And I feel done well. Bengal, for instance, in particular, given its heritage, which is fumbling somewhat now, but given its great heritage of higher education, could easily become a hub of global education, startup slowly, people from Africa, people from other Asian countries coming here, and the long run benefits are immense of that.
Thank you, Professor Basu, for an extremely thought-provoking, wonderful lecture. We really enjoyed it. I just have one or two points to make. The first point is this, that you spoke about the large number of Indian students who are studying abroad and they are making their place there. What I want to say is this, that why should they go abroad? The brain drain that is happening in this country is also immense. And many of the students who go out, actually most of them, they refuse to come back again. And that is one point I wanted to make. The other point is this, actually, India has a large resource and in many sectors they need not go out, but they are going out. And the next point is this, that just as there is an economic imbalance between rich and poor, there is also an educational imbalance between rich and poor. And this is not being addressed by the government or the educational thinkers in our country.
Yeah.
That is what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. So all important points, the large number of students, and it's an increasing number of students going abroad. Unfortunate, but what do you do about it? I feel it will be completely wrong if we just stop them from going. That's one way of stopping the brain drain. India creates a law that you have to study in India. That will do a lot of long run damage. If you can't give the quality of education that they are going after, just stop them. That will be unfortunate. The way to correct that is to provide better education here. The way I'm saying that if Calcutta became a hub of global education, or it can be suburbs of Calcutta, a city can't take that much, that people from developing countries begin to come here. There will be many Indians who will begin to come here instead of going abroad. But another thing I will point out, that the loss of people who are going out, yes, the brain drain does damage, but it's not all damage, I have to say. The presence of Indians in another country, and the Indian connection is a very deep connection, does also help ideas flow back, work flows back. A lot of India's outsourcing business, it is believed that Bangalore took off because of one reason. America gives H-1B visa, the professional visa. About half of the H-1B visas go to Indians. I don't know the latest number, but till a few years ago I used to track. Half of it goes to Indians, 54%. Next is Chinese, 9%. So professional visas being given out of India, talent being drawn. True, that's a loss here. But part of it is also, again, because those are the people who are then outsourcing here. Those are the people through whom knowledge is coming. So I don't think it's entirely a loss. But to the extent that a loss is taking place, it has to be a voluntary method of stopping it. And the only voluntary method of stopping it is to do better over here. That's your first question and my response to that. The second one is related, of course, that there are resources here, they need not go out. This again, I sympathize with the ultimate state of what is happening. So many going out. But if the the opportunities are not there, that will happen. And if you stop by saying that there's a law that you can't go out, you will do more harm than there are countries which have closed down completely. I mean, North Korea is completely closed out. North Koreans can't go out anywhere. But they have crashed their own economy in the process of that. So again, the way to hold back is creating an atmosphere of ethos of creativity and openness where that people will not want to go out. And the educational imbalance between the rich and the poor. Rich and the poor, the imbalance is in everything, consumption, education, in everything. Again, there are certain basic needs where we take the view that, okay, let the rich have more cars, but there are certain basic needs on which there should not be differences. And we believe that education is one of them. And here I completely agree that let there be imbalance in the consumption of cars, in the consumption of clothes, but in the consumption of health, in the consumption of education, there should not be an imbalance. And we have to intervene to make sure that you get an equitable amount. United States is not a good example of that because there are huge differences. But Britain, with its National Health Service, which is now going through a very bad phase, was an attempt at that. There can be very rich and very poor, but in terms of basic health and basic education, there should be no differences. And there I fully agree that even before we can begin to correct the income inequality, we have to attend to correcting the inequalities in these domains.
So, thank you so much, Professor, for such a nice lecture. Two questions. So, one is that we keep hearing about need to invest more in education, higher education, health, or hospitals are not in good shape. But when you sit in and you have been in finance ministry, so you know that ultimately it has to balance out. So if I increase say 6% of GDP, then where do I cut out from? And that will have an impact there because that is also it's an issue. So first question is where do you get started? Because individually if you see it's all good to go, but then where are the resources? So that is question number one. And question number two is that whatever little money we are spending, how do we increase the productivity? For example, first we said that okay we have to pay teachers better. Now, while there is a huge difference between, say, teacher salary in private sector versus the public sector salaries have gone up reasonably okay.
Right.
At the same time, there is huge amount of absenteeism.
Yeah.
So money cannot be, as you also said, money cannot be answered. But what are some of the practical things which you can do, which will at least ensure that those teachers, whatever money we are spending, is at least being utilized well. Then we will worry about giving more allocation to education as a thing. So this was So,
Okay. The first one, Manav, of course, fiscal deficit, and especially sitting in the Ministry of Finance, I was acutely aware because there would be continuous demands, spend more on this, spend more on that. But in very short, if the government does spend more on everything, inflation will pick up. You're just handing out money. People are trying to buy more things. The goods remaining the same, inflation will pick up. So fiscal deficit always have to be kept in mind. But there are the trade-offs. There are many things on which I'll say don't suddenly jump up and begin to spend more. Education is something where I would do that. Health is an area where I'll do that. And you begin to balance it out by cutting in other domains you begin to cut. I am in favor of a higher wealth tax where you transfer a part of the wealth for these kinds of expenditures. Also, if you look at tax GDP ratio, India is very low. Compared to rich countries, compared to middle income countries, roughly 10% to GDP, it's very low. We can easily go up to 13-14% tax GDP ratio. If we go up to that, we can begin to spend on that. But I do want to emphasize that I face that very strongly. People will come and demand for 20 different things, you spend more. And the next thing you know is that 6 months later, inflation is going to pick up into that. So you have to, of course, keep that in mind. On the salary and teachers, I think we are exactly on the same wavelength. We want a decent salary, but which in actually government-run schools, that is the case. The absenteeism is a problem. I feel one mistake we make, this is a bit of psychology rather than economics, but it is important. We don't pay enough emphasis on that. For teachers, for the police, anytime we talk in terms of getting them to behave better, function better, not take bribes, we talk in terms of giving them more financial incentives. What we don't talk about is pride in the work. I think this is so important. It's very difficult to, in economics, we like to do things when writing it down in algebra and models, we can't do that. I think pride is important. Some countries where, a whole lot of, even in the United States, if you've had a road crisis and the police is walking up to you, you know that you're not going to be asked for a bribe. The police will come, and why? Because that police could also make some money and ask for a bribe. I think they've been taught about the pride. I am the upholder of the law. And people do, after some time, that sits in. I'm doing that job for the same reason I'm saying Delhi School of Economics, no one saw whether we are teaching or not. But we did it because we took pride in that job. Likewise, I feel school teachers, the pride in the job, and these things are not impossible. It means, I don't know, we are here with Ramakrishna Mission people, with Namritam, some kind of a reorientation of our thought that this is a part of our moral compass, that we take pride in these things and it's not just money. Sounds like talking about woolly and notional things, but I don't think so. I think it's possible to do, and paying some attention to the psychology of taking pride in your work can improve our police service vastly, cut down on corruption, and can improve our teaching services vastly.
Yes, we'll just be taking two questions more. Otherwise, we all have lots to ask. We will just take two questions. Yes.
Professor Basu, we are talking about education at a time when from American universities, Stanford, Barclay, and Princeton, I get message from them in, that that the sixth mass extinction is coming.
What?
Sixth mass extinction is coming, and the first species that will go out of Earth is the human species. If the business as usual goes on. And what is business as usual? I'm saying for the last 20, 30 years, how the business as usual has grown with the developing shopping malls that is taking place all over the world now. Now, at this situation, we are talking about education. Now, in 1992, World Bank had made a study about the environmental degradation cost. And when this was received by the Center for Science and Environment, which publishes Down to Earth, this report came in, and I read that at that time it was only 4.5% of the GDP of India was the environmental degradation cost. That was the calculation by World Bank. But when the scientists of Center for Science and Environment, they studied the report, they said that they saw that a lot of things have not been treated. And they included all those costs, and it was about 7 to 9% of the GDP of India. If you are rising by 4 to 5%, you are going down at the GDP environmental degradation cost. We don't understand, but the future children who are growing up today, they will understand the situation. So at this global situation of the tremendous catastrophic situation that is taking place, we should think about the society, we should think about the type of education that should go in for that kind of society.
Shomurda, very interestingly, I'm right now working on a paper, but I don't know if it will ever be finished. For the last 9 months with a friend and a co-author, we call the paper the Dinosaur Risk. That society today is probably facing the risk that the dinosaurs face. And the gist of the paper is that the dinosaurs then perished, they became extinct. We have one difference from the dinosaur which we must use. We have the capacity for analyzing our own behavior. The dinosaur did not have the capacity to pause and say that if we continue the same way, we will go extinct, but human beings have that capacity, and the paper talks about it. But here is my view that I agree that we are underestimating the risk, and not just environmental risk. The way we behave, way we function. Let me step back a little bit. In economics, we usually write down the economic conditions of how a society progresses. What we forget is, below the surface, there are also social norms, cultural practices. Those things also play a very important role about whether the economy will succeed or not. And when technology changes, some of those cultural norms, if they don't change in an appropriate manner, we can begin to do so much damage. Polarized society, messed up society, that the world economy could crash and cause an extinction. And I also don't, I'm not sure that we will not go extinct. Creatures have gone extinct, and we have to be prepared for the fact that that's possible. But we have the capacity to think. We have to pause and do that. I'm not completely sure we'll be able to solve one area where I'm again taking a special interest is with so much globalization, we need more global agreements, collective agreements that this kind of a behavior is permitted, this kind is not permitted. Very difficult to reach that. But I think we are at a stage where we can't look away from that and say that business as usual will take us there. So I have no easy answer, but I have sympathy that this is a challenge that we face.
You raise the point of the humans have the power to think. In the 17th century, the philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal, he warned humankind. He said that humankind is a very small link in the immense web of nature. It is the only species on earth that has got the power to think. And through thought, it can change nature and can be responsible for nature and can change the world for worse or for better or for worse. When I look at the world, that our thought which is making the economic growth, that is changing the world to a catastrophic crisis. Thought itself, which creates the industry, which creates the technology, which creates the science. That is really what is today destroying the world by changing, by the continuous economic growth that is taking place in the whole world. We have to rethink perhaps in that perhaps the name which you are referring time and again about Rabindranath Tagore, Gandhi, they can play a very important role in thinking.
I think so. Yes.
Last question for this session. I've got two hands, so I just need one question from them.
Good evening, sir. It's a privilege to be here and to ask you a question here. This is Rajoshi Chatterjee. Work-wise, I'm in Mumbai and passionately doing something in Purulia. Born Danga, within the magnetic zone of Udayan Pondit of Hiroprayat Deshe, I know. One small question is that this brick and mortar school, it's wonderful privilege, really feeling envious about the students studying here. Uh, Whether it's possible to go into the grassroots level where geography is now history, because with this COVID scene, can we have model schools like, where they can collaborate with other small schools and give this curriculum, and also with that some technical education where we find that unemployment is rising in this manner. If it can be done, it will be great. This is a plea actually to you and to Nandritam team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just repeat your plea and the effort now to reach out to other schools in the region, giving them some of the model that Namritam is following is indeed an effort towards that. Tomorrow I'm going to do some visits to some of these schools. I'll see that. But all I'll say is yes, just doing it in one place is not good enough. You have to spread the model elsewhere, and that could give us some hope in these times. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for this session. We ended this session. Can we just stand up and give an ovation to sir, please? Thank you for being so patient. Thank you, sir, for all the information. It was very interesting. Even our children are carrying back something. I can see from their faces. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.